Welcome to TechTrends. TechTrends is a podcast series that provides perspective on the latest trends in technology, fintech, and digital. On today's episode, we're going to talk about low-code development, what it is, how it works, the capabilities and benefits it provides, and how it may change the business landscape going forward. I'm Anish Bhamwani, Chief Product Officer for Commercial Banking, and joining me today is John Napoli, Head of Strategy, Governance, and Execution for the Chief Technology Office here at JPMorgan Chase. John, welcome to TechTrends.
Thanks for having me, Anish. Really a pleasure to be here.
So, John, you and I both spent years in technology where seemingly the only way to deliver software and platforms and processes was to employ, skilled developers to write hundreds or thousands of lines of code. Flash forward to today, and we're increasingly hearing more and more about low-code development and citizen developers and how it's revolutionizing software. Can you explain for our listeners what exactly low-code is and how it works?
Yeah, sure. So low-code is really an approach to software development and process automation that requires little to no coding, as the name would imply. And the idea is pretty simple. You try and leverage configuration-based or more graphical user interfaces to allow people to build enterprise technology in a way which in the past you would have to do through traditional kind of coding. And so the other thing that it really focuses on and trying to put this power in the hands of what we call citizen developers. So people who aren't necessarily trained as traditional software engineers. So I use an example of kind of websites. When I graduated university, I remember when we used to build a website, we'd have to go and we'd code through HTML, and you probably remember we would use style sheets and all these complex things. Now nobody really does that. You can go to something like WordPress or go to a different website where you can use templates or drag and drop, and you can build some pretty powerful websites without a lot of work, including e-commerce type websites. So it's taking that kind of an approach and applying it to other type of scenarios or situations.
So basically, you're abstracting away the complexity of writing code and letting people write, whether it's pseudocode or other things like that, to help generate programs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why the term is somewhat generic in the sense of low code. It could really be applied to a bunch of different use cases, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Okay, so let's pull on that thread a little bit, right? So it's clear how low code works. Now that we understand that, what are some of the real tangible benefits of low code solutions?
Yeah, so a couple of different things. So first, it really empowers end users to be able to build things themselves, right? So if you think about an organization like ours that has over 250,000 individuals in it, a lot of those different subject matter experts can actually then go and build their own enterprise solutions as opposed to just relying on enterprise technology. Also, it does reduce backlogs for those developers. So people who are in enterprise technology, they typically are trying to work on some big boulders that are really strategic. And then they also have a bunch of things in their backlog that are smaller and just things that need fixing or might specifically just address one specific area or line of business. By removing some of those other smaller items, you can really focus on the big strategic tasks at hand, making the biggest difference for the firm overall. The other thing is it's pretty quick time to market. So as opposed to having to go into a backlog for an enterprise technology organization, if I can use enterprise technology and build something myself, I can get it up and running quickly, and I can actually iterate on it much faster. The other nice thing is I'm the subject matter expert. So as opposed to just always translating to somebody else who has to build something exactly what I need, I can actually iterate on a regular basis. I can make tweaks. If there's something I don't like as I built this and start to leverage it, I can do that on the spot or much quicker. The last big thing is it really does improve risk and control. So if you think about our organization, there's a lot of manual processes or things that happen in an organization or leverage more traditional technology like Excel or Access. By putting this stuff in enterprise technology, I can then govern it better with clearer tech asset management. And also I can leverage that data in better ways in the future and even feed it into things like artificial intelligence, machine learning models. So a lot of benefits to us driving this approach in the organization.
So basically you're providing these citizen developers, whether they be in operations or the business or whatever, with a platform with which they can do all the things they used to do offline in Excel or in one-off tools that had no controls into something that is sort of sanctioned and approved, but gives them the flexibility they need to do what they need to do to do their jobs, right?
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit more about some of the use cases that we're seeing for low code?
As I alluded to, you can really, anybody who owns a process can leverage this, or anybody who wants a visualization or needs to get their hands on information. And so we're seeing, as a result of that, we're seeing use cases emerge throughout the entire organization. And so a lot of the use cases we see are in the areas of things like case management. So if you think about our organization, we have over 70,000 operations people. I'd said before that we have over 250,000 overall, and they can all use it. But those operations people, a lot of them are working day to day on these cases that they're using Outlook and email, they're using SharePoint, that might take potentially weeks to get an answer on something. So they're doing handoffs which aren't very effective. By leveraging a lot of this technology, we've actually seen we can reduce a lot of this work to be what used to take weeks, might be hours, or in some cases even minutes. And so overall, in the low-code workflow space, which is an area I'm very passionate about right now, we're seeing about a 30% productivity improvement, and we're seeing about a 70% straight-through processing improvement. That being said, I've spoken before about kind of low-code being more of a generic term. There are a lot of different areas within the industry and within our organization we apply this. So some of the different places are process and task mining. So process and task mining is really powerful. You can actually you can actually scan your logs. You can actually record your screen and what you do throughout a week. And you can then, as a result of that, end up with an explanation of what are the processes that happen on a regular basis, where do most of the cases flow through, and where might you have exceptions. And in many cases, those exceptions take a lot more time. We also are using robotics. So I know last year you had a session on robotics, and that's been really successful in the firm. So we have thousands and thousands of bots now within the organization, and that's been great in terms of automating repetitive tasks that people traditionally had to do on a regular basis. So what you do is you create a bot, and that bot almost logs onto your system as if you were an individual, and will take these repeatable tasks and allow you to do it 24/7, which with a lot less defects as part of it. We also see this being applied to a lot of document understanding. So you think about all the contracts and all the different documents that a firm like JPMorgan has to deal with on a regular basis, leveraging these tools and things like natural language processing to read through those and help assist in terms of identifying areas where you need to focus has been very powerful. We think about data. So an organization like JPMorgan, given our breadth of relationship with households in the United States, we have a tremendous amount of data that we can use to really improve our customer service. So getting that data in the hands of the people in the front office or in operations who want to leverage it, having some of these tools, data transformation tools, is very powerful, especially when you then feed it into what we call data visualization tools, which is also within low code. So you think of, if I have a good set of data, as opposed to putting it in Excel, I can actually really do some pretty creative analysis through some of these data visualization tools, and then share that analysis with shareholders, with stakeholders who kind of need it. And then last but not least, again, an area I'm really passionate about is the automation of manual workflows. So that's a really big one where we're seeing a tremendous uptick now throughout the whole organization. And so if I think about JP as an example, we've already saved over 1 million hours of work by doing this build out, which covers thousands of processes. That being said, we have thousands of more to really focus on. So it's really an interesting area that we're focused on going forward.
So, John, as you mentioned, we had Shefali Shah on a previous episode talking about intelligent automation and talking about the range of almost a spectrum of robotic process automation, or RPA, at one end, and machine learning at the other end. And there's a full spectrum of things along the way, right? One of the things that we talked about in that episode about robotics is when you put in a bot, you really are almost putting in a temporary solution to give you the time and the free up the capital to invest in what we might call sort of more long-term or proper automation around that. How does low code fit in that? Do you think about low code solutions being more of a permanent solution or more of a stopgap until you can do some of the more sophisticated things out there?
Yeah, I think as we progress in technology, we are doing more complex things. So I really do see low code being integrated across not just broadening the spectrum or universe of people that can leverage enterprise technology, but also impacting the way that traditional software developers do their work, because they're doing more complex things. So thus you need more abstraction. And so there's a lot of providers now that are even starting to incorporate that. That being said, a lot of traditional coding is still needed. So in many cases, whether you're doing integration work, whether you're doing something really complex, you can't just rely on the configuration or these graphic user interfaces. So it's that hybrid or combination. But some of the basic stuff, why do you need to code it all by hand when it's something you can do in a much easier way? The other thing I'm seeing is, again, more on the traditional software engineering side, there are different providers who allow you to graphically do what you would do in a similar kind of framework from a software engineering perspective. So similar constructs, just again, doing it through a little bit more dragging and dropping. And you could always get to the underlying code to do the more complex things. And then in those cases, they will actually allow you to deploy on top of their agents or their virtual machines. And then that all gets deployed through containers, which can be leveraged in any of these new kind of paradigms, whether it be on the cloud or internally in different places to be hosted. So it really is going to change a little bit the way that software engineering is done in the future. And again, broadening that universe to a lot of people who in the past couldn't actually do software engineering.
Okay, so let's look at that a little bit, and let's look at the other side of the coin. Obviously, you and I both grew up in software engineering and computer science, right? And we've traditionally had seasoned developers who have traditionally been your code warriors, right? What does low code mean for developers, and how should companies that are exploring low code solutions think about their developer roles? I mean, are people not going to need these armies of developers anymore?
In my opinion, the world in general is getting more technical, right? So there's very few business cases these days that don't require some technology component to it. So it's not about less software engineers, but what this does, this allows the software engineers to focus on those higher order problems. So in my space specifically, we're actually focused on things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, which you discussed. We're focused on things like quantum computing, and then in the future things like virtual reality and augmented reality. So there's a lot of complex things that are being done. Now, that being said, not everybody has a PhD in some of these different focuses. So as much as we can abstract out some of that complexity, it helps, right? So we're actually thinking about how do we use low code for artificial intelligence and machine learning. We've actually deployed some things in our investment bank that allows traditional quants or analysts to actually leverage that. So it's more about how do we assist and augment the existing software engineers and replace them in any way.
Okay, great. Now, with any new technology, there's always risks involved, right? So what are some of the potential risks associated with low code, and what should companies that might be looking to deploy this technology be on the lookout for?
Yeah, no. So Anish, you and I know in the past, if we were to say we were going to allow anybody within the organization to put their hands on enterprise technology, we'd be very concerned. And we worry about having these shadow IT organizations that sometimes grow in the business, and we worry about the issues it can cause. So things like performance issues or potentially have outages that result into our operational systems, and we can't have that, right? So in the past, we were very controlled around this. So things have changed. These offerings have matured significantly. So what they allow us to do is, one, give the power to the individuals who are out there in the front office in the business, but also allow us to monitor that and facilitate that and orchestrate their actual development. So just because you sit in the front office and you're a citizen developer doesn't mean that you don't have to do all the things that a traditional software engineer would have to do. The little thing that's a little bit different is because we know exactly who these users are, and because we're working towards a model that supports them, we orchestrate a lot of this in an elegant way that facilitates a lot of the stuff and hides that from them. So they can really just focus on providing the business value, but we do track and make sure we have the proper guardrails in place, including understanding everything going on from a tech asset management perspective, making sure they have the proper entitlements in place, making sure that people aren't seeing, as an example, data that they're not supposed to be seeing. But that's all part of the operating model and how this all works as a new paradigm.
Yeah, and actually, you could think about it actually improves controls from what you have now, because you think about the volume of, SharePoint sites, or I remember when we were trying to get our arms around all the user developed tools that are out there, and macros or models or things like that. At least now we have a framework in which to sort of put everything, right? Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about scale, right? So in a firm like JPMorgan Chase, as big as it is, scaling a new approach to technology is not always the easiest thing in the world, especially now as you're talking about engaging tens of thousands of people that are not technologists in this, right? How do you scale low code in an organization the size of JPMorgan Chase, and what lessons have we learned that might be useful to others?
Yeah, so it's definitely a federated model. So the idea is I could go tomorrow and hire 600 developers who can do, can do visualization, can do data manipulation, can do the automation of workflows, but that doesn't really make sense as a paradigm. It kind of defeats the purpose. So the idea is to get the power in the hands of these citizen developers that are out there in the business who want to leverage newer technology versus having to rely on somebody else. So how do we really go about that? We built a federated model. And so if you think about it, you have a center of excellence that sits within the business. I'll call them the product owners. And they're there to answer questions and to kind of evangelize what this offering is. So if somebody in the business comes to them with a problem, they can say, okay, here are the different kind of solutions you have. Here's how to think about it, and we'll help facilitate the process. Now, they're just really the tip of the spear and the first point of contact. But then when you get to actually saying, all right, now I understand and I want to build something, within each of our lines of businesses or corporate functions, we have centers of excellence that exist that are almost power users or experts in this. So what they can do is they can really help you to sherpa you along the process and guide you. So the idea, as an example, in our investment bank, if there's something you want to automate around making it up around onboarding or KYC, you can go to the center of excellence within the investment bank, and they will help to explain to you, okay, here's a training you need to do. We're now going to provide you access to the system and all of that. And then underneath that, within technology, and this is where I'm focused, you have these platforms that support that. So you want a enterprise technology platform to ensure it's up and running all the time. You're dealing with the contracts with the vendors, where there are outages, you make sure that you address them, you make sure you have the scale, and you have separation of functionality where need be. So it's really that federated model where it's the tip of the spear with a firm-wide center of excellence, then the federated line of business centers of excellence, and then the underlying technology platform, which really makes it work. So for anybody who's really interested in building this within an organization, there's a few kind of tips I always think about. So one is you have to make sure you have the right controls framework in place. So a place like JP, which is very risk averse, we always make sure that if we're going to open this up to a bunch of different people, that we know exactly what's going on, and we make sure that there's proper oversight and guardrails end to end. You also have to make sure you have the right support model in place. You can't just let people have at it. You really do need these centers of excellence, whether in the line of business or within technology, that can help facilitate this and answer questions for people, because they will have questions. Over time, as they mature, they'll get much better, and it'll be a virtuous cycle that continues to grow. But in the short term, I mean, a lot of people are new to this. You also have to think about go-to-market activity. So this is an education for people. There's a lot going on. They have their day-to-day, and they don't always know the tools that they have at their hand. So going out and talking to different organizations about here are some of the things you can leverage to do your job better is important. So we spend a lot of time educating people on what low-code and no-code is and isn't in the firm. And then also, this is not something you could do without enterprise technology. So I talked about supporting the platforms, but also a lot of these different things, you're leveraging enterprise tools that require integrations, that are at massive scale. And in some cases, if actually the thing you build is so successful and you leverage firm-wide, they might decide that, you know what, that's an area where we actually want to take and build with an enterprise technology tool. So that conversation with enterprise technology is constant, and you have to make sure that partnership's there.
Yeah, that's great. And I like the way you think about sort of the pyramid, if you will, right? At the base, you have the technologists building the platform the same way you might be building a platform for customers, just their customers happen to be internal, around this. And then you have, call them like the power users that are sort of training or providing consulting services out to the tens of thousands of people that are out building these things. So it's not a total free for all with everybody just building whatever they want in this environment, right?
100% Anish.
So, John, let's look into the future, right? If you look ahead 3 to 5 years, what do you see as the future for low-code solutions? Where are we going with this?
Yeah, so I got to say, I'm seeing exponential growth in just the areas we're focusing within the firm. And so I'm really excited about the market in general, and I see it exploding. And so if you talk to industry experts, one of the things they're saying is by about 2025, you'll see about 70% of software engineering is going to be leveraging low-code in some way. And again, so for me, it's great is part of that is expanding the universe of people who can code. Secondly, it's also affecting existing software engineers and the way they do their jobs in a certain way. And so if you look about the market in 2020, it was about $13 billion in terms of size. And by 2027, the estimations are it's going to get up to about 65 billion. So at least the industry experts are saying it's going to grow significantly. That being said, on the front lines, again, I see it. And it's not just the use cases for existing solutions that are growing in terms of low code, but it's also the breadth of different use cases that you can apply low code to. So I'm super excited about the space. It's different every single day. We talked about potentially applying it to AI ML, which we're starting to do here. So I'm really excited, and I see a lot in the future and something that everybody should be paying attention to.
Yeah, it feels like it opens up whole new areas that we can focus on, right? So it's not an either or sort of thing with traditional development, but as you said, you can focus traditional development on the much more technical use cases and things like that, and then this on much more of the more traditional but more widely applicable solutions that people need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're working closely with your business around a couple of different cases that we think are going to be, really good kind of baseline to really grow from there.
Well, John, thanks very much for joining us today and for sharing your thoughts on this really interesting topic.
Really pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And to all our viewers, thanks for joining us. Remember, if you like this episode, you can subscribe, like, or share. Tune in next time.
you.